Steve?
Has the president looked any further into Tom Price's use of a private plane, and is he taking any steps to crack down on his practice?
Look, as the president said yesterday, he's not thrilled, certainly not happy with the actions. We're definitely looking at the issue. They're conducting both an internal and an IG full review. But to be clear, also, the White House does not have a role on the front end of approving private chartered flights at the agencies, and that's something that we're certainly looking into from this point forward, and have asked a halt be put, particularly at HHS, on any private chartered flights moving forward until those reviews are completed. Sure.
Does Secretary Price expect to keep his job in this administration?
I think the president's addressed this yesterday. We're going through this process. We're going to conduct a full review, and we'll see what happens. Justin.
Can I ask two things? The first, the president has 6 times over the last couple of days said that a senator is in the hospital. I think that's a reference to Senator Cochran, who's not in the hospital. And the reason that this is a relevant question is that the president said that they have the votes for the health care bill to pass. So can you tell us what senator he's referring to, and if it is Senator Cochran, why, if the votes exist, the Senate isn't voting on that now?
Look, our understanding is that the senator was physically unable to be here this week to actually participate in a vote. We're glad that he's fully recuperating. The point that we're making is that we have the votes on the substance, but not necessarily on the process, which is why we're still confident that we can move healthcare forward and get it done in the spring.
And the second thing is, obviously, the president didn't support Roy Moore in the primary, but he's moved to kind of warmly embrace him since then. But I guess what I'm wondering is, Judge Moore has made a series of controversial comments saying homosexual conduct should be illegal, equating being gay to bestiality, saying that a lawmaker who's Muslim shouldn't be allowed to serve. I'm wondering why those comments shouldn't disqualify him from a presidential endorsement, particularly considering that on the campaign trail, the president promised to be advocates for those groups.
As we've said many times before, I'm not going to get into back and forth on political endorsements from the podium, so I'm not going to weigh in on a specific race ahead of time at this point. Matthew.
Thanks, Sarah. I want to follow up on that because, as you mentioned, Judge Moore, as homosexuality should be illegal. He said that Sandy Hook was some sort of divine retribution. He said Keith Ellison should not be permitted to serve in Congress because he's a Muslim. So without asking about the specifics of the race, does President Trump share any of those views that I just mentioned? And if not, why does he think this person is fit to be a U.S. Senator?
Not that I'm aware of. I have not taken a deep dive on every comment that the senator or the Senate nominee has made, but I certainly know where the president stands on those issues and wouldn't see any parallel between the two of them on that front.
Are there any beliefs a candidate could hold or actions a candidate could take that if he were still a Republican, the president would not endorse him?
I'm not going to get into every potential hypothetical that any potential candidate may or may not have over the course of the time that the president is the president. I know where the president stands on specific issues. That's what I can speak about, not somebody else that's a candidate for another office that's not here. Anita. Go ahead.
I think that was
Anita.
it.
Yeah.
I didn't get to, Tom did not call on me, so I'm going to ask the question I wanted to understand. He mentioned in response to what Senator Rubio was saying, asking the Pentagon to be in charge, that the Pentagon is in charge of a lot, but not everything. I still don't understand why it's not in charge of everything, or what the response will be to Senator Rubio, who sent a letter over to the president today.
Again, we're continuing to work with state officials, including the governor, who, as Tom said, we have confidence in, but we're supplementing and augmenting that with federal resources, including over 10,000 federal employees and a one-star general that's there on the ground on that front.
One entity in charge, I guess, is the question. He said many people were in charge of different things. Why is one person not in charge, or one entity?
Well, I believe one person is in charge of different parts of this process. The governor is still the governor of Puerto Rico. We're continuing to work with them, be in constant contact, and we have one person in charge of the federal component of that, and that would be the one-star general on the ground working with state officials.
Sarah, two questions. One, I know you said the White House doesn't approve charter flights ahead of time, but generally speaking, given the focus of the president on cost saving, like you said, you want to not just drain the swamp, but he wanted people to spend money in more responsible ways. Is there a policy of the administration for government employees and cabinet members to try to fly commercial? Do they have any guidance? Were they given any guidance as to how they should be traveling?
Yeah, we're looking into that. When it comes to military aircraft, that's a part where the White House does actually play a role. And on that front, the Trump administration has actually authorized far fewer flights for senior government officials than the Obama administration did during the same time period. And so we're continuing to look at ways to bring that back under the places where the White House has that direct control and authority, which is under military aircraft, which we've cut back significantly at this point.
I just want to follow up on the Roy Moore comments. I know you don't want to talk about the race, but from the podium, do you want to at least condemn some of those sentiments that you said the president, to your knowledge, does not share?
I would certainly say we don't agree with those comments, but in terms of whether or not I'm going to get into the back and forth over another candidate, we're here to focus on the president's agenda, and those are the questions and the people that I can answer for. Jeff.
One more question on Secretary Price's flight. You said the White House was not aware of it, but on at least one of those flights, a senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway, was flying with him on the private flight. Are you looking into that one specifically to see if the White House knew about that?
I didn't say we weren't aware. I said the White House doesn't authorize those private charter flights. Again, we're doing a full, not just of that flight, but an internal review at HHS of all private charter flights, as well as an IG review that'll be conducted of all of them, not just any one particular flight. So that'll be very thorough. Julie?
Follow up. If the president, as he's watching this coverage in Puerto Rico, is he satisfied with what he sees as the response here? Is he satisfied in what he's hearing from his advisors, or would he like to see things moving along faster, as some of people on the ground have asked for?
The president wants to continue to do everything we can to protect the safety and security of the people, both at the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. We're continuing to do that, as Tom spoke very in depth about that process and what it looks like. That's our focus. That's what we're going to be continuing to do. People first, paperwork second. The president has empowered all of his agencies to go forward with that mindset, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Julie?
I saw that Secretary Price was here today for an event with the First Lady. Did the President have the chance to sit down and talk with him about this issue of his private jet use, or has he had a one-on-one conversation with the Secretary about that? And when you said that the White House has ordered a halt on all of these flights, is that administration-wide, White House people, every agency? You said particularly with regard to HHS?
That's specific to HHS. I don't know that they spoke today, but I know they have spoken about this issue previously. I don't believe the president saw the secretary at any point today, though.
So then following up on that, does the president believe, or does anyone at the White House think that there has been a tone set at the top here that has allowed cabinet members to feel empowered to be able to take private jet flights when they're going on official travel? I mean, we now have the HHS secretary, the EPA administrator, the Treasury secretary took a flight on a private jet in an itinerary that's widely available commercially. Is there something that the president has said or done to set this tone that this is okay? And what is
Not at all, and I think the president's been clear about what his position is by stating very clearly that he is not thrilled with the airplane use at this point. Catherine?
Two things. One, I just want to make sure I understand the extent of the review process here into Price and others. You said there's an IG review, there's an HHS review. Is there a White House component? And is Price being looked at, or is anyone who's been accused of?
For HHS specifically, they're conducting an internal review as well as an IG review. The White House is looking at more of an overall, not specific to that department, because there's already 2 reviews taking place there.
Okay, also, Sarah, the president said that he would donate personal funds, I think $1 million, to Harvey relief. Is he making any kind of personal donation to Puerto Rico?
I haven't talked to him specifically about that, but he didn't make a donation to Harvey Relief. He made a donation to relief organizations, the Red Cross and many others that are part of all of the hurricanes that we've experienced over the last several weeks. And so those organizations aren't limited to a specific, nor those donations, a specific storm, but they go to those organizations that are helping aggressively and intensely in the recovery efforts in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as well. Peter?
A couple housekeeping things. One, we saw Steve Scalise with that emotional remarks at the House chamber today. Did the president speak to him today or yesterday to welcome him back? And can you tell us about that conversation?
I know they did speak today. I don't have many details on that, but I'll see if I can get something. But I know he certainly welcomed him back and reminded him that we'll continue to keep he and his family in our prayers for a full recovery.
A couple other quick items. Given the extent of the disaster in Puerto Rico right now, is the president considering delaying his trip there scheduled for next Tuesday?
As of right now, we feel comfortable with the president taking a trip on Tuesday. If there were any indication that it would halt or disrupt recovery or relief efforts, we would certainly reconsider and pull that trip back. But at this time, the folks on the ground have indicated that it would be helpful for him to be there.
Then finally, has Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump or any other White House staff member taken a private plane ride since they're joining this administration, or been given access in some form to ride along with somebody else on a private plane?
I'm not sure about those two specific individuals. Have to look.
I'd like to ask about Cuba. The CBS is reporting that the U.S. is prepared to announce a major withdrawal of staff and families from the embassy in Havana. Is there anything you can tell us about that, and how would you describe the relationship between Cuba and the U.S. right now?
At this point, I'm not going to weigh in on the Cuba stuff and get ahead of any potential action that may take place there, so I don't have anything new to add.
Cuba says it warned the U.S. against taking any, quote, hasty actions in response to these incidents happening in Havana targeting diplomats. How does the U.S. respond to that?
Again, we haven't taken any action at this point that I'm going to weigh into any further. When we do that, we'll let you know. But I can assure you that our goal will be on the focus of what's best for this country, not what's best for Cuba. John Decker.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. The president, as you know, has said that players who kneel or take a knee during the national anthem ought to be fired. And you yourself have said from the podium in response to a very critical tweet by an ESPN anchor that that individual ought to be fired. You said it was a fireable offense, which brings me to Secretary Price. His extensive use by these private jets, why is that not a fireable offense? It's my first question. And has he offered to reimburse the government in any way for his use of those private jets?
I think that's something that we would determine once those reviews are complete. In terms of reimbursement, I'm not sure. I'd have to check and get back to you. April?
Sarah, on the taking the knee issue, we're understanding that many of the NFL players are still very upset with this back and forth.
I think so are many Americans. Far more
Okay,
Americans than there are NFL players.
Can I finish my question, please? Thank you. Many NFL players are very upset. Many people had different ideas and opinions on this, but when the president weighed in, the NFL said we're going to be united. There is an anticipation that it could grow even more so this weekend. What is the president anticipating? What should we expect him to say about this? It's now the NFL against the president.
I think the president's made very clear this shouldn't be about the NFL being against the president. This should be about our country coming together to support the flag, support the national anthem. There's nothing wrong with having pride in the United States. This president's been very clear on that, and he's certainly not going to back away from it.
Okay, so the NFL players, what we're hearing, it's not about not having pride. They're saying they're patriots. They love this country, but they're challenging the system, and they're looking at history like the challenge of the system when it came to women's rights issues as well as civil rights. What does the president say when you look at history and see how people love this country but wanted to challenge the system to make it better?
I think if we're going to look at history, we should look at the thousands of Americans who have given their life to protect that flag, to protect that anthem. We should be celebrating those people. I gave you a chance to answer. I'm going to finish your statement. We should be looking at every way we can to celebrate our country, bring it together, not looking at ways to divide it. The president is simply talking about what we're for, not about what we're against. And certainly this administration will always be for protection and celebration of the flag and the national anthem, and that's not going to change.
Sarah, wait a minute, to clarify.
Guys,
Sarah, 1 second, just to clarify on that.
I don't think there's much to clarify.
Yes,
I think
it is.
was
Yes,
pretty,
this is a big
pretty
issue.
black and white there.
People are very divided on this issue. It is a racial issue for some people, and the question is, when the military issue is brought in, the military goes and fights for the freedoms of this nation, and the players are saying they are thankful for the military service to allow them to have the freedoms to do this. I mean, is there some kind of confusion here, or is it a us versus them kind of scenario here?
It certainly shouldn't be. As I've said several times before, this isn't an us versus them. This should be something that brings our country together. These are symbols of what our country stands for, and this should be the opposite of what that is. This should be a very unifying moment when the national anthem plays. All Americans should be proud to stand up, salute that flag, salute that anthem, and be part of that process. Go ahead.
Follow on that. The president this morning said he believes NFL team owners are afraid of their players. What do you mean by that?
Probably the backlash of the players and the stance that they're making, and not wanting to create that conflict within their team. President is here to lead the country. He feels very strongly about this, as do most Americans, because they certainly agree with him, as we've seen not just in the public support, but also in public polling on that very, very specific issue. Jerome?
It has now been 4 days since Angela Merkel was re-elected in Germany. Has the president found time to talk to her?
I believe they spoke either yesterday morning or this morning, and we have a readout coming on that, and we'll make sure you guys get that.
Thank you very much. Follow up just quickly, 2 quick questions. Follow up on the NFL thing. I may not be the brightest guy in the room. Wait a minute, don't say anything.
You said it.
Say, don't say anything. But my question is...
But nobody else argued either, so...
Nobody's going to argue. But I really don't understand. I understand that he's saying you should stand up. But if a guy's sitting there going, I don't want to stand up, he still recognizes he has a First Amendment right not to, yes? Or is his opinion, he's not... Or is he asking us to carve out an exception to the First Amendment for freedom of expression?
No, we're not looking for an exception. I think the president's been very clear of what his position is, and he feels very strongly that when the national anthem plays, people should stand up.
Okay, and then the follow-up, wait a minute, I had a second question. I did have a second question. The second question was in regards to the private emails that have gone out. As the president admonished any of his staff on that, is he concerned about them using private emails for public business?
Yeah, the White House has been clear and instructs all staff to fully comply with Presidential Records Acts. All staff has been briefed on the need to preserve those records, and will continue to do so. Brian?
Cochran and the
We'll
healthcare
make this the
vote.
last question.
You said about Senator Cochran and the healthcare vote that it was the White House's understanding that Senator Cochran was not able to physically be here this week. Well, Senator Cochran's office has said that there have been plans made for Senator Cochran to come to Washington if there was going to be a healthcare vote. Was the White House not aware that those plans had been made?
That was our understanding, as I said, that the senator was physically unable to be here this week. We're certainly glad that wasn't the case. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be in the office the rest of the day and happy to answer the rest of your questions.
Sarah, will you go to Hefner Street?